Hibbitt. Oh, he's tried well! Oh, that's a brilliant goal! That is a brilliant goal! And a break on for Hibbitt. Have to hurry. Talbot's coming back to him. It's on for the shot. Left-footed. What a beautiful goal!
He didn't chase the roar. He didn't move for the cameras. And when his name was left off the headlines, he let the silence speak for him. Kenny Hibbitt was something rarer than brilliance. He was reliable. He wore the same colors for over a decade and a half. Not because the world wasn't watching, but because he never needed it to. While others rose on flash and fell in scandal, he just kept showing up. In an era of mavericks and mouthpieces, he was the heartbeat in the shadows, the one who ran the hardest and asked for nothing. But time forgets those who never ask to be remembered. That's the tragedy of consistency. It doesn't beg for attention, it just carries on until the world moves on. This isn't nostalgia, this is correction. A name once stitched into the fabric of Wolves, now barely whispered outside Molineux. He scored when it mattered, he led when it hurt. He didn't shout, he didn't shine, he simply endured. Subscribe if you still believe football was once built on loyalty, not branding. Kenneth Hibbitt was born on January 3, 1951, in Bradford, West Yorkshire, a northern city carved from stone, smoke, and silence. He didn't grow up dreaming of Wembley. He grew up dreaming his father would make it home from work. Older brother Terry, also a footballer, was away playing, but that dream ended early. A sudden heart attack stole his father at just 40 years old, and in that moment, boyhood ended. The house didn't fall apart, but it fell quiet. Kenny was still a teenager, but he knew the weight was his now. There was no time for complaints. He stayed home, looked after his mother, helped his sister, and buried the ache the only way he knew how, by running harder than the rest. He began with Bradford Park Avenue, a forgotten name now, but in those days it was a proving ground. He made 15 senior appearances in the 1967-68 season. Didn't score, didn't shine, but they noticed something in him, something stronger than flair. Discipline, loyalty, fire under control. And in November 1968, a call came from the West Midlands. Wolverhampton Wanderers were offering $5,000, not for a star, but for a worker. He didn't celebrate. He didn't pose for the papers. He shook hands, packed his boots, and left Bradford the same way he'd grown up in it. Quietly, with something heavy in his chest and unfinished business in his eyes. Because deep down, he wasn't just chasing a dream. He was carrying a promise. But to Wolves, it was a risk. And to Kenny, it was everything. He was 17, still carrying the loss, still learning what it meant to move for himself. His debut came the following spring, April 12, 1969. A late substitute in a 1-0 loss to West Brom. He touched the ball once, maybe twice. And then, like that, he vanished. For 18 months, he didn't play again. Not a start, not a squad number. Just training grounds, reserve games, and closed doors. Most players would have drifted. Most would have moved on. But Kenny Hibbitt wasn't most players. He stayed quiet, stayed sharp, waited without bitterness, trained without complaint. Then came September 1970, Chelsea away, Stamford Bridge, thrown back into the fire, and this time, he made it count. He scored. A midfielder with no rhythm in the press, now leaving a mark on the scoreboard. It wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy, but it was his. From that day on, he never disappeared again. Not for a week, not for a season. He became the heartbeat Wolves didn't know they were waiting for. The gamble had paid off. Not with headlines, but with history in motion. He wasn't supposed to be the hero. Not in a squad filled with flash and fire, but season after season, match after match. Kenny Hibbitt kept showing up where it mattered. He wasn't just breaking up attacks, he was scoring goals, and not the tap-ins, not the lucky ones. His boots thundered from 25 yards, low strikes, screaming volleys. Corners ripped apart like paper. The numbers built up in silence. Midfielder by name, forward by instinct. He wasn't trying to entertain, he was trying to win. And then came March 2, 1974. Wembley, League Cup Final, Wolves versus Manchester City, a wall of noise, a nation watching, and Hibbitt, quiet, focused, fire in his chest. Just before halftime, the ball fell his way. And with one swing of his boot, He sent it roaring past the keeper. The first goal in a final that would end in glory. Wolves lifted the cup. But Kenny? He just walked off like it was a match at home. No chest thump, no camera kiss. He didn't need it. Because Wembley had heard his name. He'd become the top scorer for Wolves' 1974-75 season from midfield. Hat-tricks, long ranges. In Europe, he fought. In relegation scraps, he bled. And still, he kept scoring, kept running, kept wearing the shirt like it was skin. Because for Kenny Hibbitt, glory wasn't a moment. It was a promise you fulfilled every single game. Some players become legends by leaving, by chasing trophies, by lifting silver in someone else's shirt. Kenny Hibbitt became a legend by staying. After Wembley, after the roars, after the glory, Wolves began to slip. The season turned, the goals dried, and in 1975-76 the club fell into the second division. And Hibbitt? He didn't call his agent, he didn't ask for a move. He pulled his socks up, rolled into training, and stayed. Because loyalty wasn't something he said, it was something he did. The following year, 1976-77, they came back up. Promotion earned the hard way. Midweek mud, winter battles, silent nights in small grounds. Kenny was there for all of it. He played through more than just tactics. He played through 6 different managers, each with new systems, new ideas, new favorites, but they all had to keep one truth on the team sheet. Hibbitt starts. And still, the storm didn't end. The club would fall again and rise again, and every time, the badge stayed on his chest. He could have walked away rich. He could have chased England caps, Champions League nights, brighter lights. But he didn't. Because Wolves wasn't a phase. It was a vow. He featured in the 1972 UEFA Cup Final, lost to Spurs, won the League Cup again in 1980 against Forest. In 1982, went on loan to Seattle Sounders, 14 games, 4 goals. He stayed when it hurt. He stayed when it cracked. And because of that, when Wolves stood tall again, Kenny Hibbitt was the one still holding the line. All engines slow. Even the ones that never asked to be worshipped. By 1984, Kenny Hibbitt had given 16 years to Wolverhampton. He had scored, led, bled, rebuilt, and rebuilt again. He had been the noise behind the scenes and the silence after the whistle. But football doesn't do sentiment. And Wolves were changing. His final match came on May 5th, 1984. A 0-0 draw against Watford. No send-off, no fireworks. Just a man in old gold, walking off for the last time. He left quietly, the same way he arrived. Moved to Coventry City, 2 more seasons. Then Bristol Rovers, still fighting, still running, until February 1988, when one tackle broke his leg and closed the chapter. The game moved on. The crowds forgot. He had made over 580 league appearances, scored more goals than many forwards, delivered in finals, carried clubs through crisis. But he was capped just once, for England under-23. The senior call-up never came, not even once. Others were louder. Others had agents. Kenny just had work to do. And when the curtain finally dropped, he didn't argue with it. He simply nodded and let history decide whether it had been paying attention. But those who wore gold, those who stood on the terraces, they knew. Wolves had lost more than a player. They'd lost the man who never stopped showing up. He never chased cameras. But somehow, the game kept calling him back. After the boots were hung up, Kenny Hibbitt didn't disappear. He just shifted lanes from midfield general to the man behind the dugout glass. In 1990, he took charge of Walsall, a small club with big problems. He brought in discipline, he brought in humility, he brought in Kenny Hibbitt, and for a while, that was enough. He stayed there until 1994. And when they parted ways, he didn't complain, didn't moan, didn't look for pity. Just like always. He moved forward, managed Cardiff City in 3 stints, 1995-96, briefly in 1996, and again from 1996-98 before moving into a director role. Later, managed Hednesford Town from 2001 to 2002. And just like always, he tried to build something stable, while everything around him shifted like sand. He wasn't the shouting type. He wasn't the political type. And in the modern game, well, that meant he didn't last long. But it wasn't failure. It was Kenny being Kenny. He was never trying to be the star. He was just trying to be useful. When he left management, he didn't go on a media tour. He returned to something he'd always known: scouting. Worked reviewing referees for the Premier League and trained the local team Kingswood, teaching clubs how to see what stats can't. A career in 3 acts. First, a soldier. Then, a builder. And finally, a silent shepherd. That's who Kenny Hibbitt became. The man who never needed the spotlight, but kept walking toward the fire anyway. At Molineux, the name Kenny Hibbitt still hums in the brickwork. Not through marble or ceremony, but through memory, through presence, through the echo of 574 matches, 114 goals, and a heart that never cheated the badge. In 1982, Wolves gave him a testimonial match, not out of routine, but out of reverence. A thank you to the midfielder who gave 2 decades of loyalty to the Gold. That day, Molineux didn't applaud out of habit, it roared out of love. Inducted into Wolves Hall of Fame in 2011, he gave the club more than goals. He gave them belonging, the feeling that someone out there still played for them. No scandals, no spotlight addiction, just tackles, crosses, passes, and a name that refused to fade, even when the lights dimmed. Wolves knew. Their fans still know. Kenny Hibbitt didn't just wear the shirt, he became part of it. At 74 years old, Kenny Hibbitt is still with us. Still standing, still Wolves. He doesn't chase the spotlight. He isn't writing memoirs or doing the pundit rounds. He lives quietly now, close to family, close to the Midlands, rooted in the same values he played with: loyalty, humility, and the kind of work that never begged for praise. No scandals, no drama, just a man who gave everything he had and walked away with peace. He's not trending. But in Wolverhampton, his name still lives in the stands. Subscribe if you believe loyalty never goes out of style. Because men like Kenny Hibbitt didn't ask to be remembered. They earned it and left it written in gold.